Coronation Street viewers believe Todd Grimshaw may be heading towards an emotional and troubling new storyline after spotting possible clues in recent episodes of the ITV soap. Some fans have suggested that Todd's increasing reliance on alcohol could be an indication of what is coming next for the troubled character. His recent behavior has made it obvious that he is struggling, particularly after everything he has endured over the past several months. Todd spent months trapped in an abusive relationship with Theo Silverton before eventually finding the strength to walk away. However, escaping the relationship almost cost Todd his life after Theo subjected him to a brutal attack. Earlier in the year, Todd had already been planning to leave Theo with the support of his close friend Billy Mayhew, who had discovered the truth about the abuse. However, Theo attempted to silence Billy after causing a devastating car accident that left him fighting for his life. The truth about Todd's relationship eventually came to light when his concerned friends and family began noticing that something was seriously wrong. Theo was later killed by Sarah Platt during a dramatic confrontation, but Todd never received the justice he deserved for the suffering he had experienced. With Sarah now behind bars and both Theo and Billy dead, Todd has been left struggling to rebuild his life. Recent episodes have shown him withdrawing from the people around him and becoming increasingly hostile towards those closest to him. Viewers have also noticed that Todd appears to be drinking far more than usual. His heavy drinking has raised concerns that he may be struggling to deal with the emotional trauma of everything that has happened to him during what has been an extremely painful year. Now, some fans believe Todd's continued isolation and increased alcohol consumption could eventually lead to a serious storyline involving alcoholism. Viewers have questioned whether Todd is turning to alcohol as a way of escaping his painful memories or hiding the problems he is unable to confront. There are growing fears that his drinking could develop into a much more serious and destructive problem in the coming weeks. One fan took to social media and asked, "Potential drinking problem ahead for Todd?" Another viewer commented, "Todd is drinking a lot." A third fan shared their concern by writing, "Todd is becoming an alcoholic." Another viewer observed, "Todd has been drinking a lot lately." Meanwhile, one fan offered a possible explanation for Todd's recent behavior, saying they believed he was struggling to cope with everything he had experienced. They wrote, "I think he's in so much turmoil he can't cope and is lashing out. Not saying his behavior is okay, but he's spiraling and on self-destruct maybe. Losing Billy, the abuse, Theo's death, Sarah in prison." The fan then added that they had noticed several predictions suggesting Todd's constant drinking could eventually lead to an alcoholism storyline. They continued, "I saw a few predictions that the constant drinking could be a sign of an alcoholism storyline coming. I did wonder this myself with him being in such a dark place and do think it's a possibility they will go this way, especially as he seems to be isolating himself." For now, Coronation Street has not confirmed whether Todd's drinking will develop into a full alcoholism storyline. However, his recent behavior has certainly left viewers concerned that his difficult journey may be far from over. Tim Metcalf, played by Joe Duttine, nervously arrived at the local prison in today's Coronation Street episode. He had been given permission to visit his cousin Richie Parkinson, played by Nathan Sussex, who is currently behind bars after being accused of killing his wife Rachel. Tim's life was turned upside down last week when he discovered the horrifying truth about what Richie had allegedly done to Rachel. The cousins had only recently reconnected after spending several years apart. During their earlier meeting, Richie opened up to Tim about an argument he had shared with Rachel. He told his cousin that he planned to stay with a friend in Liverpool for a while so that Rachel could have some time and space. However, Tim encouraged Richie to return home and attempt to resolve their disagreement. Richie eventually followed his advice and went back to the house. Tim later visited Richie's home after discovering that his cousin had accidentally left his wallet behind. When Richie opened the door, Tim was left horrified after noticing that his cousin was covered in blood. It soon became clear that something terrible had happened to Rachel, who had been killed. Although Tim had not seen Richie for several years, he had never considered him to be someone capable of committing such a violent act. The revelation that his cousin could potentially be responsible for a murder was therefore incredibly difficult for Tim to process. However, Rachel's death is not the only problem Tim has suddenly been forced to confront. Following Rachel's death and Richie's imprisonment, their daughter Lucy has moved into Tim and Sally Metcalf's home. The couple, played by Joe Duttine and Sally Dynevor, are already experienced foster parents. Lucy has been left extremely vulnerable by everything that has happened, and her unpredictable temper has created several challenges for Tim and Sally. Whenever she believes someone is judging her father unfairly, Lucy quickly becomes defensive and angry. During today's episode, Tim visited Richie in prison, with the pair eventually discussing Lucy and how she was coping with everything that had happened. It soon became clear that Richie had another favor he wanted to ask of his cousin. At present, both Richie and Lucy have maintained that Rachel's death happened because Richie was acting in self-defense. Richie then attempted to persuade Tim to tell the police that Rachel had been violent towards him. However, Tim immediately pointed out that he had never actually known Rachel, meaning that giving the police such information would involve him lying. Sarah Platt is set to take drastic action in next week's Coronation Street as she desperately tries to protect her son Harry, with the troubled character preparing a dangerous weapon to fight back against her prison tormentor. Kacey has been threatening Sarah in an attempt to force her to get Kit's assistance, but the desperate mother is now preparing to retaliate after her fellow inmate threatens to harm Harry. However, the big question is whether Sarah will actually go through with the attack. Sarah's already proved she'll kill for those she loves, a Weatherfield source explains. This is a desperate move that could add years to her sentence, but she needs to show she's not to be messed with. It's survive or die in there, and Sarah is learning the hard way. Sarah's experience behind bars continues to become more frightening, with Kacey's intimidation and violent behavior making everyday life increasingly unbearable. At the same time, Sarah's relationship with Kit has fallen apart, leaving her feeling as though she has failed her young son. Sarah is particularly worried about Harry because she knows Kit is finding it difficult to manage everything outside prison. Although Bethany attempts to convince her that Harry is doing fine, Sarah cannot shake the guilt and emotional pain she feels about being separated from him. Things take an even more sinister turn when Kacey enters Sarah's cell and discovers her fellow inmate crying uncontrollably. Rather than showing concern, however, Kacey delivers another chilling warning. Sarah is left terrified when Kacey casually mentions Harry by name, making it clear that she has somehow learned personal details about Sarah's son. Sarah hoped Kacey's threats were empty, our insider reveals. She thought that as long as Harry was being well looked after at home, then he'd be able to cope without her. Now that she knows that Kacey has influence on the outside, Harry's in real danger. Meanwhile, Sarah's family remain unaware of just how serious the situation has become. Back on the cobbles, everyone attempts to carry on with their normal lives while an unseen threat hangs over Harry. Bethany becomes suspicious after noticing blood on Kit's shirt, while Alia and Adam take Harry to visit a new friend's house. Neither of them realizes that Sarah's prison problems could soon put Harry in danger. Coronation Street airs on weeknights at 8:30 p.m. on ITV1 and streams on ITVX.